All right, joining us to break it all down for you and put these numbers in their proper context for you is Mr. Anil Padmanabhan, a senior journalist. Mr. Padmanabhan, welcome to DD India. Are you surprised or pleasantly surprised by these numbers?
Oh, pleasantly surprised, because like all your speakers before me have laid out the fact that nobody expected these numbers. All the analysts had got it at least 1 percentage point lower than what eventually came out. So the only thing of concern to me in this entire data is whether the Q1 stupendous success can be endured in the next 3 quarters, given the inclement global circumstances.
Right. We'll come to that in just a bit, but what would you attribute these numbers to? Is it capex, agriculture, construction sectors performing well, exports, services, rural demand, low inflation, or all of the above?
Rajesh, I think you answered it. It's all of the above, but I think I would like to take a step back and point you to the direction of the structure of the Indian economy. Say a little over a decade ago, the Indian economy's economic architecture was highly vulnerable. You had about 500 million people without a bank account. You had an equal number of people living below the poverty line. So basic access to services were missing. Today, if you look at the Indian economy, all these boxes have been ticked. So which means the basic economic structure is in a very sound place. Now, post-COVID, the government of India took a very proactive response in pushing for hard-nosed economic reforms. So they did push through a lot of changes, the outcome of which we are beginning to see today. Now, the trick is that since the basic framework of the economy is sound, we have established resilience, then how do you keep this up is to do the pending round of economic reforms, particularly focus on the ease of living and ease of doing business. Once you unleash these animal spirits in the Indian economy, leave it to the people, they will do the rest.
Fair enough. Point taken, Mr. Padmanabhan. Now talking about the individual sector performance, how do you look at, say, for instance, manufacturing?
Rajesh, manufacturing is, the performance is very healthy. The only thing it doesn't reflect what we are seeing in the IIP, but it reflects what we are seeing in an alternative proxy variable called the Purchasing Managers Index, which is showing this kind of buoyancy which the Q1 numbers have captured. The other aspect of manufacturing is that, as we all know, that investments, particularly from the private sector, have more or less stagnated, not just now, but since 2008. So what we see are the beginnings of that return of private investment. They are still early, they may be green shoots, we can't say for sure, but that's a very healthy sign for Indian manufacturing, because unless and until we get our manufacturing in place, you will not create the kind of force multiplier for growth, more than jobs. And secondly, the technology capability of the country improves dramatically when you grow your manufacturing. See, China is a great example in that. So this rebound of manufacturing and hopefully the revival of investment, particularly from the private sector, is a good sign and probably a trend of things to come.
And now coming to the elephant in the room, as it were, Mr. Padmanabhan, how do you see the Trump tariffs affecting India?
See, Rajesh, great question. The Trump tariffs will begin to play out from now. It will reflect very strongly in the second quarter and subsequent quarters. But having said that, the Trump tariffs have been threatened over a quarter ago. So the fact that the Indian economy was able to withstand the shock of those dramatic remarks and deliver this kind of growth is a positive sign. Secondly, the kind of growth that you have achieved in the first quarter, you have front-loaded a lot of the growth, which means that you have created a kind of capability to absorb the shocks of Trump tariffs or at least mitigate them. to a degree. Now it's up to how Indian policy, public policy responds, how India Inc. responds in exploring new markets. So the Trump tariffs are a fact of life. And finally, what I'd like to point out is that I see this narrative targeting India. But the thing is that India is not the only country subjected to this kind of tariffs. Brazil is there, Mexico is there, Canada is there, Switzerland is there. So, it's a universal challenge. And the fact that the Japanese trade negotiator cancelled his visit to the US suggests that there is some element of rethink happening globally. Internally within the US, there's a marginal uptick in inflation, but the public has begun to react because the prices at the retail level are beginning to hurt them. And there is a growing dissidence within the political establishment. So hopefully all of this will come together and rein in this kind of tariffs, which are simply not sustainable, not just for the United States, but for the world in general.
And dwelling a bit more, if you will, on the US tariffs, Mr. Padmanabhan, how should India navigate these trying times? Should India stay the course, or should India take anticipatory or preemptive measures going forward?
See, Rajesh, India is doing everything right by the book right now. We are keeping up the dialogue, not responding to the rhetoric that is emerging from the White House, from President Trump and his advisors, which is excellent, because that's how diplomacy is managed, and it's not managed in a public space, it is managed behind the scenes. So that's great. Secondly, what India has to do, and it should have done many years ago, is to push through the second generation reforms. Today, the biggest challenge that India faces, forget about these Trump tariffs. There is, at the moment, India and Japan enjoy 0% tariffs on textiles, but no textiles virtually go to Japan. Ask yourself why. Primarily because Indian goods are not competitive enough. And why are they not competitive enough? Part of the reason is the ease of living and ease of doing business, process reforms, the kind of red tape that Indian business has to deal with. Of course, cost of interest is another aspect. So India needs to undertake strong reforms to fix its competitiveness. Then no Trump can hurt it. Look at the way China is dealing with the United States. They have this command over the global economy. They account for 30% of manufacturing. Most importantly, they account for high-end technology value-added products, which gives them a tremendous hold, like in green minerals. So they could afford to leverage that. India, unfortunately, does not have these leverages that China enjoys, but we have huge purchasing power, potential purchasing power. And that is what India needs to leverage, but to simultaneously, to weaponize that capability, India needs to undertake reforms, bring business up to speed.
Mr. Padmanabhan, do stay on. I'll come back to you momentarily. Let's get you some more reactions that are pouring in. The president of the PhD Chamber of Commerce and Industry has credited the new GDP numbers to the structural reforms by the Indian government. Take a listen.
At PhD CCI, we are thrilled to announce the GDP results which have come out have been the best in the last 5 quarters. 7.8% growth report shows the strength of the Indian economy. The structural reforms which the government has done over the past many years have shown results in both rural and urban market both. We positively see that today there is growth in the construction industry, in the manufacturing, in the services, in the agriculture. Even with the hiccups of the Trump tariff today, we still see the continued growth. There may be a small hiccups in 1 or 2 quarters, but long-term story India remains quite buoyant.
Also, the EEPC chairperson Pankaj Chadha has hailed India's latest GDP growth rate as a testament of a resilient Indian economy. He highlighted India's robust industrial output as well.
It is heartening to note that the Indian economy for the first quarter has grown by 7.8%. This shows the resilience in the Indian economy and also the fact that we have been able to bear all the external challenges in a very smooth and very determined manner. I think the industrial output is also growing. The first time that we have crossed $10 billion in this current fiscal year in the month.
Right. Coming back to Mr. Padmanabhan, you spoke about second generation reforms. In that context, I'd like to ask you to look ahead and tell us, do you think GST reform and rationalization, for instance, or RBI interest rate cuts, or even a good monsoon will hold India in good stead?
Rajesh, definitely the monsoon will positively impact the economy. It's well above normal, which is a great thing because it will boost the rural sector, create agriculture surplus, which means rural demand will grow, and rural demand is the backbone of the Indian economy. So excellent. But coming to GST, I worry that what has to be done may not be done. Meaning, they're resolving the problem of rates, the slabs, and the anomalies like the inverted duty structure. Great, but if I was in the GST Council, I would be looking ahead. Given the circumstances that we just discussed, globally situation is so inclement. So how do I hone the Indian economy's capability particularly in improving processes? So I presume or I hope that the GST Council does address that challenge, which is particularly tax overreach and the red tape, which has begun to undermine, or not undermine really, but hurt the GST, which is, by the way, the single biggest tax reform, which for the first time economically unified India. It's a huge thing, which we cannot dismiss by any stroke of imagination, which means how do I preserve it? So looking ahead, there are two big items still outside the purview of GST, which is alcohol and petroleum products. They both are within the realm of states. Now what is happening there is, there are about 32 tax jurisdictions in this country, and so effectively there are 32 tax rates playing out on the case of petroleum and alcohol. So the GST Council, I presume, will use wise counsel and address this. This is the structural reform that the GST requires. What they are doing now is the kind of errors that have crept in, which is a great thing, because at the end of 8 years, it is time to always take a fresh look, review yourself. But I would suggest they look forward to. So in terms of GST, that's the agenda. RBI, I think they've done a fantastic job, particularly after COVID, and ever since any dissonance between North Block and Mint Street was missing. Not that they talked to each other, there was a coordinated response. The government of India controlled its fisc, which is remarkable given the kind of global challenges, the fact that no social welfare was cut, and India had to deal with not just COVID, but the Russia-Ukraine war, global inflation, etc., and all these things. They maintained the fiscal balance. The Reserve Bank on its part has been thereby empowered and has gone after rates, gone after inflation particularly. Having lowered inflation to comfort levels, it is now cutting rates. So as far as I see, the Reserve Bank of India is also doing its job. So at this point of time, every institution in India is ticking its boxes to do the right thing. But what I worry is the future.
Indeed. Prime Minister Modi, for one, Mr. Padmanabhan, has said during his visit to Japan that India will, quote unquote, very soon be the third largest economy in the world. So for the benefit of viewers joining us from around the world, if, as you say, India's fundamentals remain strong, is India on course to becoming the third largest economy of the world?
Rajesh, in all likelihood, yes. Unless and until we see something which we have not seen so far, the global economy can't get worse. And again, like the Indian economy exhibited resilience, the global economy has also done pretty well for itself, despite some which are not in their control, like the once in a century pandemic like the COVID-19, but others which were in their control, this Russia-Ukraine conflict or what's happening in West Asia, and now of course what President Trump has unleashed on the world. Despite all this, the world economy is still holding its own. So I see that if these shocks don't worsen from where we are now, nothing is going to derail India's trajectory. But like I said, India's objective is not just to be the third largest economy, but to grow its economy to a developed economy status by 2047. Here we are talking about a per capita income of about $18,000. At the moment, it's about $2,700. So you're looking at a 7-time growth between now and 2047. This is not going to be easy, but it's definitely not something that can't be achieved, provided we undertake all the necessary public policy steps that are required.
So India remains as bright a spot as ever. On that note, Mr. Padmanabhan, may I thank you for joining us and sharing your perspectives with our viewers at home and abroad. Thank you so much. Appreciate it.